Hi, and welcome to the Senior Network. I'm joined today by Debbie Lyons, my co-host.
Nice to see you.
You too. I'm Greg Fulton, and we also have with us today Bob Scudder with IKOR and Jim Keith with Keith's Funeral Home. Glad to see you folks.
Thank you.
This is a lot of fun today. We're talking about lots of planning for the holiday season in interesting kinds of ways. I wasn't familiar with really what your job was, Bob, and really what it entails. Pretty interesting stuff.
Sure. Yeah, IKOR was designed to provide professional advocacy and life care management for people. And what that really means is that we look at people holistically with what's going on in their lives. We treat and work with a lot of seniors, people with disabilities and illnesses, and also with children with special needs. And our approach is that we look at them really as a whole person.
Okay.
There's so many, in today's society, so many specialists that are looking at certain segments of a person's social network or their health or what's going with them financially. We really are sort of a one-stop shop where we can do all those things.
So, for example, I have a daughter who's 14 who has special needs. She has pervasive developmental disorder. How could you and what would you provide? What kind of service would you provide us?
Typically, we employ RNs as our nurse advocates. Our nurse advocate would go in and do some basic assessments and screenings just to get a feel for where they are, sort of an independent screening. Certainly we would look at any medical records that you would have or your daughter would have about that. And then we try to figure out what some goals for her working with you and what she's trying to achieve in the near future, but long term. And then we'll put plans in place to help her achieve that.
This is like, and then I always have to say, in real language, what does that mean? Are you helping me navigate the system?
We'll help you navigate the system.
I don't know if that's the right way to say that or not, right?
Yeah, to some degree. And there's certain instances where when you're dealing with something for a long time, you may have blinders on and somebody else coming in can say, hey, why don't we look at a different approach? So maybe we take a different approach and maybe we help them achieve
resources
something.
too is key for resources.
Exactly. What we were talking about before and bringing it sort of full circle here is we literally, you and I were talking about, as your parents age, they may not want to talk about funerals. They may not want to talk about pre-planning. They may not want to talk about those kinds of things. And that was something that you were interested about in sharing today.
Exactly, and I have worked with Bob in a couple instances, and it kind of goes hand in hand with, you know, we're in the same business. We're trying to help people.
Right.
And it's a business that, like I've said before, no one really wants to use. You know, no one wants to call him because they need help doing some daily things, and no one wants to call me because that means it's over.
Right.
And
no one wants to call you because that means we need help. So our three guys here, these are who you really need, actually. But it's interesting. That's why this is so helpful.
Yeah, and I do some work with special needs people too. My mother was big into the special needs group and had a choir, and she took them around singing, and so we really have addressed some issues with that as well. But one of the things, you're coming up after the holidays and you're going to start making New Year's resolutions, and that January and February are the busiest times for people to say, okay, well, I'm going to do it this year. I'm absolutely going to pre-plan my funeral and see what it costs and put the money aside, and I hope they do. It makes it easy for everybody.
And I know, Jim, you'll take the time to go and sit in people's homes and actually have a consultation, right?
Prefer that, absolutely.
Oh, do you really?
I
do
do.
we know what we want? Like, I've always wanted to be bronzed. Oh, is that a bad thing? Look at Greg's like, did she say that? No, but seriously, do we know, are people more, is cremation something that people consider more than they used to?
Oh, absolutely.
Are there options that we're not really aware of?
Basically, you're going to be cremated or you're going to be buried. But your options really come down to what type of service. Are you going to have a service? Some people don't want to have a service. Some people want it simple. But then you get into, because they aren't selling so many caskets anymore because of the cremation rate, the funeral homes and the casket providers are trying to make creative ways to make money because they're not making the money like they used to. And so now they have fancy urns, they have fancy blankets, chairs. You can shoot your ashes into space. You can turn them into a wreath.
Sweet.
You can turn them into diamonds. All this stuff came because people weren't making any money in the funeral business, and they're trying to figure out a way to do it.
So that's why we need you, Bob, to make sure that we don't make
Well,
a diamond out of ourselves.
As we talked, it's it's a holistic approach. But as we're advocating for somebody, health is a big issue, but outside of the health, we're asking the questions, are the bills going okay? Are you socially interacting? Because social is a big part of your mental. But when we do talk, we do say advanced planning. And even though they're tough issues, I can talk to your parents about them, and you can talk to my parents easier. But when I'm talking to somebody objectively and advocating for them, and I bring that up, even though that's a tough issue, once they make those plans,
it's empowering.
Yeah, that's right. They're in control, and they're not leaving that for loved ones to try to deal with in a very short time. So I've been in meetings, and Jim's approach is, straightforward, and hey, this is how we can help you, and there's no pressure. And people feel much more comfortable seeing a person, talking to them, and knowing if something were to happen all of a sudden, and you have everything taken care of, it's a much peacefuler way to go through life.
It's so funny as we're talking about this, my one question keeps coming to mind for all three of you and for you. At what point do I call you? At what point do I call you? At what point in my life do I call you? I mean, I'm 63. Do you do it at 20? Do you do it at 70? Do you do it before it's time?
Well, it's a great question, and the problem is a lot of folks wait too late to call all of us, I'm sure, to make the plans. And that's why in Bob's business, in being in home care, we get pulled into so many situations that that's not what we do. We're there to provide care, and then this whole life management and services of other things, that's why someone like Bob is so important to us, to give him a call and say, hey, this family needs this, and he'll go and sit down and we'll talk with them about that. Well, we're going to need to take a break.
Okay.
Just for a moment.
Come back and answer
definitely.
these.
And we will be right back. Stay tuned.